So this full moon in Libra, 28 March 2021, coming right up here on Sundays, bringing themes of passion, of quick movements in relationships and love. There's a fire in the heart that burns, and that fire sometimes needs to come out into the world. It's just part of life. It has to have an egress. This full moon, I think, is a time when there might be an opening for some of that fire to emerge. The other part of it is, I think, action coming into play. And sometimes we are forced to act without knowing quite what's happening. We don't have the full picture, we don't have all the conditions, but we have to take action. We're put on the spot. And so there's a sense of that, being forced into action or activity without quite knowing what's happening. That's, I think, the themes of this full moon. But let's just jump right into the chart here. So the chart of this full moon is pretty sweet, because it's ruled by Venus in Libra. That is to say, Venus ruling Libra, the moon in Libra. The full moon is there in the 9th degree of Libra, or 8 degrees Libra. And the Egyptian term ruling the full moon is the Egyptian term of Mercury. So we've got Mercury and Venus as the two rulers in terms of how I like to look at rulership. And if we use the exaltation ruler, Saturn is ruling, Saturn strong in Aquarius. I think that's part of this full moon moment that actually is the best opportunity, is the Saturn and Aquarius energy adding support and grounding. But Venus and Mercury in the transiting sky are both in a condition we call exile or detriment. I like exile because it instructs us. Built into the definition of that term is part of the rationale for why a planet is challenged in a sign of its exile. Its opposite a sign it rules. And so you think about being in a place that's the opposite of what you're comfortable in. So like, I grew up in Texas. I speak English and Texas English, and I'm comfortable in that environment, at least in terms of being raised there and being just in my element, in my hometown of Austin, and my home neighborhoods that I spent many decades in. Now if you leave that environment and you're in a place that you don't know the language and you don't know the customs, so like, I travel a lot the last couple of years, and anytime there's a new city, you have to learn how the city is, what streets are the best route from point A to point B, what restaurants are most suited for me and my dietary choices. So there's a sense of being lost or confused or not quite knowing what's going on. That's what a planet does when it's in exile. It has to lean into what it wants to do, but it doesn't have support. So there's a sense of invention and having to rely on innovation or thinking on your feet or really not knowing what's going on. We have that with these two rulers, the term ruler and the domicile ruler of the full moon. So just know, as a broad stroke here, this sense of being out of the element or lost is part of this moment, part of this syzygy. Now, if we look at where Venus is in Aries. And the Venus and Aries energy, it's very hot. I just think about hot love, passioned, inflamed. Mars is blood. Think about when you're, in a moment there and physically engaged, there can be red and flushing of the face and all sorts of blood coming to places. This feels wonderful. It's a very intense thing to have happening or to be engaging in, but sometimes it's decentering. Sometimes we make decisions in the heat of passion that aren't always the best decisions. Sometimes we operate from a place of desire when maybe that obfuscates obfuscatory. I can never say that, but it obfuscates maybe our more centered self or the better decision making. So that's why people often recommend easing into relationships sometimes, and you have a kind of pacing with when we come together with people, because it allows for a sort of true understanding of another, and there can be sort of a match in a relationship as you grow together. Sometimes Venus and Aries is just too much fire at the beginning, too much connection. It can be overbearing and destabilizing. The other thing is that Venus, though, here is in this special condition of being in the heart of the sun. Venus, right here, purified by the sun. In this chart, Venus is roughly 40 degree minutes, or maybe 38 degree minutes away from the sun. So you're still in that cazimi, not cazimi if you want to break, let me just say this here. Cazimi has a special definition. It's a medieval technique. The name comes from some of the Arabic astrologers in the medieval period. They cut down what is considered the purification of a planet by the sun. They cut down the orb. I think it's something like 17 degree minutes for these medieval astrologers. But if you go back to the late Hellenistic period, where this technique originates from, this guy Rhetorius the Egyptian, his text says we only need a degree separation. My philosophy on it is when the degree orb is reached, then we have just a continuum where the closer you get to that perfection, the more intensely purified the planet is. But we're still within that 1 degree range in this chart. And so I do not discount the sun's purifying effect here in the chart. And so when we apply it to what I've just said about this passion-infused Venus and potentially destabilizing, and oh, I'm just going to go with what feels good, and then what about the consequences? I think there's an opportunity here to actually move with that impassioned moment, maybe, and with work, with play, with fun, with whatever you're doing, and there's a pocket here where we can enjoy that energy and maybe be protected a little bit from the worst case scenarios when we sometimes give ourselves over to just those desires or those pleasures without heeding, maybe warning. Here, I think we have that protection. So that's the big feature of the chart. The other thing is Mercury, right? And Mercury is still in Pisces. Mercury in Pisces has been a very rough transit this go around. I've heard from a lot of people on Twitter and from my astrologer friends. Mercury is exiled and fallen also in Pisces because it's both exalted and domiciled in Virgo, the sign opposite. So this Mercury in Pisces, I would think I talked about in my Mercury Pisces video, it's so bad that it's good. Well, it's been kind of rough this time, and part of it you can see in the chart. Mercury makes no aspect to any planet. It's averse to everything. It's averse to its domicile ruler, Jupiter. It's averse to its exaltation ruler, Venus. So it has no support from those two benefics. And it's squaring Mars and Gemini, and it is also on the south bending. That is it's squaring the nodes closely here, about 7 degrees away. It's already moved past the south bending by the time we get to this full moon. But still, think about this. All Mercury, it's lost, it's confused, it's in exile, it can't really operate, it's uncomfortable, and now it's responsible also for Mars and Gemini, and Mars having burst out of its exile in Taurus, and now Mars wants to do things. It's with that north node that's expanding the martial intensity and the desire for drive and activity and motion. And that's now Mercury being responsible for it, Mercury ruling Gemini. So Mercury is in a really rough situation. And this is the best analogy I can think of, or one of the ones I was thinking of earlier. You don't know how to act, but you're forced to act. So often in life, it's like, all right, you got to make a decision. There's no time, right? The time is up. What's your decision going to be? And sometimes we just have to go with instinct or just make the wrong decisions. Sometimes we just have to act and then pick up the pieces and deal with whatever comes from the actions. So there may be a sense of that. I know with Mars and Gemini, a lot of the folks I've talked to, there's just a lot of dynamism happening, a lot of balls in the air. Maybe some are going to drop during this time. And this full moon is maybe a climax of that plate being too full, and some things maybe falling off the table, as it were, or between the cracks, so to speak. So I think, sometimes you might think about Mercury in Pisces as this dream space or fantasy zone where there's not a need to engage. We're off on our own realm, but this Mars and Gemini is forcing us to come back into action, forcing us to make decisions even. And that's where I think the rub of this period, kind of the most difficult transit that we're having right now in the sky. And again, this full moon being ruled by Egyptian term by Mercury brings that into the focus. So the moon is getting some of that energy via the rulership scheme. And let's see here. I want to just also say, now come to the Saturn portion. Remember, Saturn is the exaltation ruler of Libra, where this full moon is. Saturn is making a trine. It's also in an air sign right now in the transiting sky, in the sign that it rules, Aquarius. So Saturn's very strong. And I just go back to this moment we're in here, March 2021. We just had that Aquarium pile up in February, very intensely Saturn moment. We're just coming off of the world being upended last year with all of that Capricorn pile up that turned the whole world on its head. Now we're getting it in the new structures. They're being installed globally. Maybe in your location where you are, I think about this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in the transiting sky, this co-presence still in Aquarius, as the truth and the abundance and the kind of new benefits that we get from the new structure, right? Aquarius is the day-sect sign that Saturn rules. It's the initiation, it's the outward form of Saturn's expression. With Jupiter there, I think there's opportunity. So I hope where you are, you're feeling that already. And you're like, all right, this is the new world. I'm cool. I can do this. I'm still breathing. I'm still alive. Things are good. There's opportunities, right? There's all kinds of opportunities out there with the technology focused reality that we're in. Remember, the full moon is in the air sign Libra. This Jupiter-Saturn co-presence is also in the air sign Aquarius. So there's a lot of air, thinking, like I said, technology. This Mars in Gemini, a lot of the action that we're having to maybe be forced into is related to those same things. Communication, legalisms. Been seeing a lot of legal stuff being triggered. Maybe there's buying and selling. But these opportunities of the air element, this syzygy, this full moon, is raising us up into that. And remember, this is a theme of 2021. All Mercury retrogrades happened completely in air signs. Mercury stations direct, retrograde, then direct in every air sign this year. This part of your nativity is in the laser focus of this 2021 astrology. So think about what's happening in the air sector of your nativity. I bet there's a bunch of activity, and this may be a local climax for that. This syzygy here, 28 March 2021. So let's come back here. Where are we? So yeah, just thinking about that. The other thing is that ancient wisdom. I wanted to mention Saturn is old things. Jupiter is wisdom and truth. When those combine, there may be ancient wisdom that you have access to. I mean, we all do on the internet, but something that you resonate with in particular that can carry you through. And everybody's talking about a new normal, a new reality. That's certainly true, but the more things change, the more they stay the same in a way. I think there may be ancient wisdom we can hold on to during this time of great transition we're in. I mean, for me, I don't know, I like kind of new age Western spirituality. There's certain books that I like within that, but I'm a practicing Vipassana meditator, so that's a very ancient practice that I've used quite a bit. Certain yogic breathing techniques are big for my daily practice to help me stay grounded. So leaning into that tool set that we've inherited, this is the Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius. It's supporting the full moon here and the other destabilizing features of this full moon. Let's keep pushing through. So we've got one note. There's no Earth in the transiting sky right now. Now the moon will move through the Earth signs once every 28 days. So that's 3 Earth signs every lunar cycle. But other than the moon, there's nothing. There's no Earth. Remember, the Earth element, home, body, structure, safety, comfort. It's that part of our lives that might not be getting as pinged right now. So maybe we're having, struggling with daily tasks or keeping the home organized, or just these other elements are more in focus, the passion, the intensity of fire, the mind and the technology side of air, and then the feeling, water. That may be more what's in play in your life. This changes in April when Venus comes into Taurus. I think it's the 14th of April. We're going to have a very earthy late April, and I can't wait for that dignified Venus. Can you? Wow. Venus is such a beautiful energy, getting that dignity back and really feeling in some of those rich pleasures that have depth and weight and sustainability. It's such a stark difference from Aries, that quick kind of burn. You move into Taurus with Venus in late April, and we're going to really saturate and have some really nice support for pleasure, like lasting pleasures, real pleasures that can stick around and be very, very supportive. But now we have no Earth. So that's just another point I wanted to make. And let's go through here. The last thing I want to discuss is this fixed star. As you know, when I analyze syzygies, I always look at the projected degree positions of fixed stars when they project onto the ecliptic and see what's close to the moon or the moon and the sun during a new moon. This one we have a really cool fixed star that actually fits very, very well with the themes that I've already spoken about. And that's why I always look at these fixed stars, because more often than not, there's a resonance thematically. It almost like it completes a circle. And this is what astrology is, right? It's the synchronistic kind of double or triple hits that we have when we apply various techniques to get a narrative that can really add value as we contemplate this weekend and then into the next 2 weeks after the full moon here, the syzygy in Libra. So this is the fixed star diadem, and it's in this constellation called Berenice, or Bernice, that was how I would pronounce that, Bernice's hair. And it's right here. It's the biggest, I think the brightest star right in the kind of the back of Bernice's head, where in Bernice, the hair, the so-called Bernice's hair constellation. And this, like how I use fixed stars, as many of you know, I like to look at the myth of that constellation. It's a whole river of mythology. I think that's astrologer Nina Griffin's phrase. I was approaching it this way, but I really love her phrase, so I've kind of started using her phrase. It's this river of myth, and we can step into that. And then it's actually so rich that it's not like it's an easy answer. It's something to contemplate, to let it saturate or wash over us. And this myth is cool because there was a king. He went to war. His wife was Bernice, the queen. She said to Venus, "Here, you can take my hair if you bring my husband back from war." And so that happened. He came back from war. And let's see here. He came back from war, and these are the sites I like. So this is Robeson. I love his book, The Fixed Stars and Constellations in Astrology. I think that's what it's called. Vivian Robeson from 1923. And then this is the website constellationguide.com. Sometimes they have nice write-ups of the myths. There's like a bunch of sites like this, but I pulled from constellationguide.com. But so he's brought home to safety. Ptolemy is the king's name. And then Bernice fulfills her promise. She takes her hair, she cuts it off, she places it at Aphrodite's temple, or Venus's temple, and then the hair gets stolen. And the king was angry, the king was enraged, and so what happened is that, I guess the court astronomer, the astrologer in this case, Conon, basically writes that Aphrodite is so pleased that Aphrodite placed the hair and puts it into the heavens. And so let's just think about the themes here and how this can fit. Right away we have Venus and Aries, love and war, right? The passions. What's the saying? All's fair in love and war. In this case we have a situation where someone's going off to fight, and then the lover is so inflamed with fear and anxiety that there's a sacrifice that's willing to be made related to the physical form. And remember, anytime we start talking about appearance, we're dealing with Venus, or how we adorn ourselves. Hair is an adornment thing. You know, you brush it, you keep it, you know, it's all about how we style it and how we look. This is Venusian. And so this fixed star, with a full moon in Libra ruled by Venus, with a Venus in Aries in Mars' sign, this can often be about those choices, like I said earlier, that we make in the heat of the moment, and that maybe we regret, maybe we don't, but we're coming from a place of fear often. And we make this kind of choice, a drastic promise. Sometimes that's how Venus and Aries can be. And these can be binding and serious, you know. And in this case, like in the case of the Bernice and her husband, it was auspicious. She made the promise to Venus, to Aphrodite, and then this hair was raised up as a kind of monument or memorialization of this promise that was made. So I just wanted you to meditate and think about the consequences of the sacrifices that you'll make for love. Let's say you're in a relationship right now, or you have a dynamic in whatever kind of relationship you're in, and there may be a threat, or there may be something that you feel strongly about and you have to make a decision or a quick act. You know, sometimes we give things up, and sometimes we put in the background our need to look good, right? We don't want to have to save face. Sometimes, or we want to save face, but sometimes it's best to say, all right, I'm not going to save face here. I'm going to lose face, but it's meaningful for me to maybe come off not looking the best. I'll sacrifice my adornment. I'll sacrifice how I look or appear because I'm so strongly engaged in a relationship, or so committed to someone, or to a principle even. Sometimes in life it's just like, look, the principle of honesty. I'm going to tell the truth to this person because that's how I live, and I don't care if I look bad. So that's what I feel like is happening with Venus and Aries. We have these triggered passions, but it's auspiciously conjoined to the sun. It's purified, and we can kind of purify our motive and maybe come out okay in this moment. So let's get a tarot reading. Let's see what the tarot cards can add to this. Wonderful. Okay. So as you guys know, I read with a random number generator 2. And I'm going to pull from my random number generator. Let's get the first card from the 54 cardomancy deck that I use. Been a little congested, but... All right, got the first card. And that first card is Just give me a second. Cartomancy, always adding symbols to what we've already discussed. It's layers of symbols, layers of meaning, and then hopefully something stacks up to really, whatever these energies are out there that we're communicating with, when we do a few different types of divination, sometimes it gives those energies exactly what they need to form the story when they communicate with us. Okay, so this first is the Discord card. It's Venus in Aquarius. All right, it's in the first position of the recent past. Right away, what this is about to me is the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, and everything I just spoke about Jupiter and Saturn being co-present in Aquarius, still in this new reality we're in, that energy is still overlooking everything in the astrology and the skies and then in our nativity. That happened in this decan, in Venus's decan in Aquarius here, that first decan. So part of this new era we're in, I've been thinking about this quite a bit, is how the technology, Aquarius, has impacted the pleasure, which is Venus, has impacted the way we connect with people. We've been separated, a lot of us, from family, from friends. There's been minimal hugging, a lot less touching, a lot less connection in the traditional tactile sense. That is a huge part of this Jupiter, Saturn, Aquarian reality we've entered into. And so this is asking us to, I think about how difficult that's been. I know for me, I got a watch strap today, a new watch strap for a watch that I have, and the woman put on the strap and was like, her hands were touching mine. Just felt so good to have that Venusian touch in a way that I haven't been as used to recently. So it's just an example of the discord is what I named this card, but the kind of separation and the discomfort that can come when our Venus has to filter through the mind and the computers. And so, even if you see people regularly, you have a lot of people in your life, you're probably online a lot. This thing, we've got, I know Instagram, I'm on that a lot. And a lot of my DMing, all these apps, like there's so many now, how we communicate with others. That is a big part of my day, and it's not really comfortable. Been thinking about trying to get off all the apps, but I probably won't, because I do love people and I love staying engaged. But it's just meditating. How has that Venus been impacted by this Aquarian moment? And remember, Aquarian co-presence, Jupiter, Saturn, trining this moon. So I would say look to the positive things that this moment has brought our relationships. And for me, so many people I met in the world, all over the world. I have friends now that I talk to and communicate with. So it's been a great part of it, the upside to it. Maybe that's some of the support that can arrive here in this new moon moment. Okay, let's get the second card. And this is my 26 card Tarot Marseille deck. Let me just pull from that here, get the second card. Okay. Got it. So this is actually the Knight of Swords, which is interesting because everything I just said about the air element, we're actually having that air element pinged here by the Knight of Swords. So I'm not, sometimes when you read tarot, it's clear when you've talked to a client or whoever you're reading for that it's very clear what a card is pointing to. And I think in this case, it's pointing to, again, the air sector of our chart. Remember, Mars in Gemini, Jupiter, Saturn in Aquarius, the full moon, the syzygy in Libra. That air trigon is heavily activated right now. And the knights, anytime you see knights, for me as a reader in a tarot reading, it's this idea of going beyond. It's the dynamic side of that element. So we're not using it for stasis or to stay in a comfort zone. We're actually using the energy to go out and explore. That's what knights do, right? The king sends them out into the kingdom to fight battles and fight enemies and all that stuff. I think this fits with the exile idea that we had spoken about earlier, that the two rulers or two of the rulers of this new moon are in what we call exile. We might have to think about using our mental capacities here as things get clear and crystallize over the next 2 weeks. Mercury enters Aries on the 4th. So that might be what this pointing to. Once Mercury gets out of Pisces and is into Aries, remember it has a mutual reception with Mars and Gemini, and that's when I think we'll start. It's like an engine, it's like you're trying to start the car. That's when I think the car will start. And maybe our mercurial capacity can really support this action that we've been initiating into the rest of April. And before we get that heavy air, that heavy earth saturation with both Mercury, Venus, and the Sun in Taurus. But so there's a moment here in April where it's this trine and sextile between Aquarius, Gemini, and Aries. All day sex signs, all active signs. I think we'll have a much better sense of getting out, taking some risks, using the mind for success when that comes. So look for that. That's what that's pointing to in my view. And don't forget to examine the air trigon in your nativity. Those houses are in play this weekend and for the next 2 weeks. All right, so that is the analysis of this full moon in Libra. Thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure to get to do this. You can schedule astrology and tarot readings with me, sjanderson144.com. Click here to schedule a reading right at the top. And and have a lovely, lovely time. Don't forget this exile energy and this Pisces, Mercury squaring Mars and Gemini. This is probably if you're feeling off or strange, this is to blame. And this ends coming up here next week. So take care and good luck.